So our party, which is the ADC, the African Democratic Congress, essentially stands for good governance. It stands for people-oriented government that drives a prosperous and productive society where the resources of the society are shared broadly across the society. A lot of what our underlying manifesto represents is reflected in our agenda for Lagos, which we've called the Tiger Agenda. And if you look at that agenda, you will see that it talks about tax reform for equity, it talks about infrastructure, it talks about government reform, education and health systems that the people trust, and rule of law. These are all things that seek to establish a broadly prosperous society where the wealth is spread across and not just concentrated in a few, which has been essentially the antecedents of Lagos over the last 25 years.
Our deputy governor candidate is Barrister Mrs. Rosemary Giwamu, and her choice reflects two things. First is merit, and second is diversity. And that reflects an underlying philosophy that says that both of those things are important and you don't have to sacrifice either to get the other. She's well accomplished. She has served the state in the state judiciary. She has a master's in law and has actually served as a magistrate within the state judiciary, and has served, she's also served our party, the ADC, in different capacities, and indeed until recently was the state deputy chairman, even though she's having to balance that role with the deputy governorship nomination as we speak. She's also somebody who has spent a lot of time looking at social justice issues. So she works with the Justice, Development and Peace Commission of the Catholic Church and has been very active in that over the years. And this is a body that looks at things like social justice, representation for people who cannot afford representation. So essentially championing the cause of the downtrodden. And I think it's important that as a philosophy, I think that if you have a diverse group, you make much better decisions. And I think she brings a great diversity to our team. And I think collectively, working together, the people of Lagos will be very well represented and will represent a broad spectrum of the interests of the people of Lagos. I mean, there are a number of different dimensions in what you've said. I think the first thing is to have a philosophy and a stance of government that says that human rights are to be revered and are to be defended wherever they need to be. Many of the things that you've talked about are actually criminal, right? So it's not as if we need laws against them. It's just a situation where we need to enforce the laws that exist. And as a government, it would be a central theme of ours to ensure that those laws are enforced. We think that even though as a policy, the state has taken the view that we need to enable a proliferation of private schools to meet the shortfall in schools, we think that that is not inconsistent. In other words, you can at the same time still have a monitoring system that ensures that minimum standards are maintained. There should also be a reporting mechanism and an ombudsman unit within the government framework to ensure that whistleblowing, those kinds of reports are taken up very quickly and are pursued to their logical conclusion. I think for us as a government, if you recall where I started from, saying that we essentially want quality of life to improve across the spectrum, across the socio-economic spectrum. And it's important in doing that, and one of the effects of accomplishing that is that people's rights, which the poor are the most downtrodden, as you improve their prospects, as you improve their prosperity, their productivity, their livelihoods, you also deal with many of those deprivations that curtail their. I also am of the view that this issue has to do with planning. I think that, again, we're a coastal city. We know that there's global warming. So we need to be planning for the effects of this over time and over a long term. One of the things that we do is to, in defining infrastructure for a mega city, one of the elements of the infrastructure is the environmental infrastructure. And that has to do with understanding how the environment will affect the city and what channels and so on you need to have in place to deal with that. And we need to have a roadmap for this component of our infrastructure and an understanding of what it will take us to fund it on an annual basis to deal with the issue involved. I agree with the wetlands policy. I think the other point that I would make has to do with our government reform agenda. You know, part of the issue here is not that people do not all the time know what to do, but often decisions are taken by people who have the responsibility within government, not based on the interests of the people. So where planning permissions are given to block canals or to block the natural drainages, a lot of the time this is done based on inducements, this is done based on, you know, extortion and those kinds of things. And we are saying that as a general principle, we are coming in to ensure that civil servants, public workers are well compensated, and once we pay them well, we will then insist that they do their work.
Your time is up.
So the first thing, again, philosophically, we believe in decentralization. We believe that, you know, government should be close to the people, and that those that are close to the people should have the resources to do the work because they understand the needs of the people. That doesn't mean that the state should turn a blind eye or should be have no cognizance of what is going on. But if the people who are closest to the people have the resources to deal with the issues that the people face, I think we'll be in a better position. One of the historical issues that we have had is that we have not always had the capacity within the local governments to deliver that quality of governance. And as a result, or maybe as a direct part of that, resources have tended to be controlled at the center of the state. And you know that the local government elections are handled by state agencies, not by INEC. So a lot of the time what we've had is a situation where people at the center have essentially chosen people at the local government for reasons other than capacity, for reasons other than merit, on the basis of things like loyalty and so on. We believe that commensurate and at the same time that we are devolving resources to the local governments, we are also ensuring that the merit is the criterion for people rising to positions of authority within the local government. And we will have no other criteria other than merit. We're not interested in people who are loyal to us. We're interested in people who will do the work for the people. I think the fundamental problem that we have here is that the scale on which government has thought about this problem is wrong. They've thought about it on a scale that is too small. So we have the government coming and saying, beating their chest and saying we built 200 homes or 300 homes. And this is not what Lagos needs. Lagos needs affordable housing in the tens of thousands, or possibly more. And so the scale on which we think about these projects it needs to be much bigger. Now, in working with the private sector, I have run 2 pension funds. So I know that there's a lot of money that is out there to fund the development of affordable housing. There is a lot of money. The pension industry is about 15 trillion naira. What the pension industry needs and providers of capital, is not just local capital, international capital as well, need is the right institutional structures for government to do that which is government's to do. Create the institutional structures so that they can have confidence to come in and invest, de-risk those projects, provide guarantees where they are required, and there's private sector capital to fund it. And I think we should do this in a decentralized way that allows cities to develop on the outskirts of cities. So if you look at Lagos, the population is concentrated, even though Lagos is a small state, within the central part of the state. So that we need to decentralize that. And a key part of doing that is ensuring that we have the mass transit systems that connect the city. And this is another area where government has dropped the ball. Using things like waterways, things like rail. Well, I mean, I think that as a general policy, government will support, well, first of all, government has a policy, my government will have a policy to support business generally. I think that whatever government can do
to support industries in which we have a natural comparative advantage is something we will focus on. So fisheries would be one of those. Agro-allied type industries would be one of those. Lagos is not blessed with a whole lot of land resources, but we can work with our regional partners, the regional entities that are close to us, to have joint programs where, as a region, we can leverage on their strengths and they can leverage on ours, as being population, closeness to the port, etc. So we will encourage people. We'll encourage fishermen. We'll encourage farmers. But I think that the way we think about it is to say, look, how can we enable Lagos to build a more prosperous, more productive society? And that's not just in fisheries. It's across business areas. It's in small businesses. It's in large businesses. How do we take advantage of our coastal advantage? Fisheries is just one element of it. We have 25 million people roughly in our population, as you said. This is a large market and we are on the port. If we can train these people in technical skills, we become a natural... Thank you. I think most of it has been said. For me, tourism is an outcome, right? And, it's an outcome of the other things that you do. And when you do them well, the people feel comfortable in the environment and they come. If people have to spend 6 hours in traffic, going back and forth, you're not going to find your environment attractive if it's not safe, if there's chaos on the streets, if they don't have the right kinds of facilities to access. I think that government's role is not to do what the private sector's role is to do. It's not to government to try and become entertainers or create entertainment hubs. Government needs to provide the infrastructure, create the environment, do what it is supposed to do, and the private sector will thrive. If you look at the guys in the entertainment industry, the music industry, the fashion industry, those guys are doing what they're doing now in spite of government, right? And they are becoming global champions. Think about what they could do if government were supportive of them. And I think that this is what government needs to focus on. Let us focus on delivering the infrastructure, delivering the different things that we've talked about, supporting these guys. We can have creative entertainment parks and hubs to kind of incubate young up-and-coming people. We can have a technical training program as part of our educational reform that also gives people the skills and links them with industry. All of these things we can do as a government. But fundamentally, the society, the city has to work. And people will not come here unless the city works. And Lagos currently is not working. Let me start off by saying that it's not surprising that Lagos is the most indebted state, because Lagos has the most resources. And so you'd expect that it's the most indebted state. The question is, what has been the outcome of those resources that we've deployed and expended over the years? And this is where we have a problem with the way Lagos has been managed. We think that the expenditure of government lacks transparency. We think that it is not clear that government is getting 10 naira or even 8 naira or even 7 naira of value for 10 naira spent. And we think that it is not enough for government to step up and say, we are out of 1.7 trillion budget, we are spending 1 trillion on capital expenditure. If we don't know how efficiently that capital expenditure is being spent, we may actually be impoverishing the state, especially because we are borrowing to fund this capital expenditure. So for us, an important part of what we're doing is saying that, look, we have to reform government, we have to improve accountability, transparency, we have to ensure that people act with integrity, strengthen Attorney General's office, strengthen the tools of surveillance, audit, etc., ensure that things are put in the public domain. When we do PPPs that involve government expenditure, the information should be out in the public domain so that people know what is being incurred. There's a fourth mainland bridge now which is proposed to spend roughly $2.5 billion. That's no transparency around that. We'll put it out in the public domain, review it, and determine if that's something we should continue. The first thing I would do is to immediately commission a compensation survey for the civil servants and the public office holders to compare their compensation to their peers in the private sector as a basis for taking those salaries a reasonable level of compensation within a defined time frame. Because I believe that if you get government working right, then all of the policies and all of the things that we are on the path to being fixed. So that would be my first order of business. I'll do other things in my first day, by the way, but you said one, so that will be the first. 2023 is an important year for Nigeria and for Lagos. And as Lagos goes, so Nigeria goes. So I think the decision that lies before you is a critical one. We believe that Lagos has been managed well below its potential. A number of things have been said this evening. Lagos spends tremendous amounts of money each year. Last year, 1.7 trillion. And adjusted for inflation, large sums have been spent every year. What do we have to show for it? If you look at the quality of life of Lagosians, as measured by indices, global indices, Lagos lags rather than leading. We believe that our Tiger agenda for Lagos, which we've talked about, which speaks about tax reform for equity, prosperity, and growth, infrastructure for a modern megacity, government reform, education and health systems that the people trust, rule of law and public order, will deliver a Lagos that delivers quality of life, dignity, and respect to the average Lagosian, and will set a foundation for a Lagos in the first world. As you look to elect your next governor, look for somebody that has the life experience, the work experience, and the demonstrated character and track record to deliver, who has led organizations, who has managed people, who has managed resources. I have run 3 companies as managing director and CEO. 2 of them are national companies, managed resources in the hundreds of billions, been entrusted as a fiduciary by clients for over 30 years. I'm your man for the job.